which I've just started press record now actually. And so I'm from Cool Mob. We are part of the Environment Centre NT, and we are a community environmental organisation. Cool Mob works to educate the Darwin greater community around sustainable living and how we can incorporate sustainable living in our homes and work lives and community. So today we have Ellie and Gaby joining us. They are our local experts today, so they're just smiling there. They'll be taking us through their op-shopped wardrobes, giving you some tips on how to make the best of your op-shop run, and then they'll be doing some live sewing. We'll be showing you how to hem an item and how to mend a hole, and Ellie will be showing you both whether the hole is in the middle of a piece or whether it's on the hem, because you will do those slightly differently. And if she doesn't get time to actually show you both, she'll talk you through what she would have done. So as I was saying, Fashion Revolution Week is an international fashion campaign, and it's arguing for a clean and transparent industry that makes the fashion industry a lot more accountable, and calls for structural and systematic change. This week and campaign was born out of the factory collapse in Bangladesh. It was called Rana Plaza, and the clothing factory totally collapsed. Over 1,000 people died, many more people were injured, and it really brought a lot of criticism and awareness around what happens in the fashion industry. So the fashion industry as a whole is super carbon intensive and creates a lot of waste and wastewater, and can create a lot of pollution, in particular in the production of these items and the way that it is a linear system rather than a circular economy system. So at the moment, society kind of works in a fast fashion way where we just buy, wear once or a few times and then discard or send to landfill, which means that a lot of resources are going into making these items, and then we're only getting a fraction of their lifetime worth of use. So this campaign calls on people to think about who made their clothes and what's in their clothes. And, you know, on social media at the moment, you can call out to your favorite designer and just say, who made my items? Like, can you put a bit of transparency on your website as to where these items are made? Are you paying your workers fairly? Are they working in ethical conditions? What's in my clothes? So what's it made out of? Are there toxins and chemicals being put into the materials being used? And, you know, unless things are totally natural fibers like hemp and cotton and linen and made in a sustainable way, then they probably all contain elements of polyester, and other materials which are actually made of plastics. And every time you wash these clothes, microplastics end up in our waterways from your washing machine, and then they end out in the ocean. And you would have probably heard about how then we ingest these back again as they go through the whole food chain. And at the end of the workshop, we'll be directing you to some people that we love to follow online who are doing so much research and campaigning around these topics. And the leaders of Fashion Revolution Week, and you can go to their website as well. And there's podcasts and lots of activities you can do at home. So to get started, we're going to flip the camera around, and Ellie and Gaby are going to introduce themselves and talk us through their wardrobes. So if you bear with me one moment. Hey, we can see, excellent. I'm going to actually mute my screen so that, actually I won't because we're recording it, so I will just do it off this one. Okay, so both of you, would you mind introducing yourselves?
I'm Gaby. I am not an experienced sewer at all. I really developed my sewing skills when I moved to Darwin because I had a lot of clothes that weren't really weather appropriate. So I was like chopping off my sleeves and rehemming, you know, longer items. And since then, yeah, I've just continued with it, and yeah, really have the end goal of making my own clothes. So yeah.
Okay, and Ellie.
Hello. So I'm from down south as well, Gold Coast, and yeah, I was really bad. So in school, I tried to do home ec classes and only would just pass. And then when I finished, I did a year-long course in fashion design and technology. So that's what's brought me to being able to mend clothes and just sew things. Yeah, so I love up shopping and just learning how to be able to do little things to put them back together, and so a few simple basic things has been really fun, and I'm so glad that it helps out the environment as well, because it's a hobby as well as something a little bit more sustainable.
Okay, and we might ask everyone to speak up a bit so the recording can hear. But now if you can share some of your favourite op shop tips. So we're going to ask the girls if they can share their number one op shopping tip when trying to get the best out of their trip to the shops.
So I'm the same as Ellie. I've been op shopping for years and years. And when I do go in, I just try and think, you know, don't overrule anything, or, you know, think you look at a rack and think, oh, I'm not going to need anything on that rack, I'm not going to find anything, because it is often on those racks that you do find pieces that you can either mend to fit you better, or little hidden gems that become, you know, your favorite pieces in your wardrobe. So I think going in with an open mind is probably my top tip.
And when you go to op shops, Gabby, are you looking with something in mind that you need, like a certain piece, or are you just going for something to do and a fun activity?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I go in thinking, oh, I really want this kind of specific style of clothing to match with something that I already have. Or a lot of the time I just pop in and see what they have to offer. Like this top that I'm wearing today, I picked up from the Red Cross just at the Jake Homemaker Centre. I just saw it on the rack and I thought, oh, you know what, I'm going to chop that. And it's, become one of my most worn pieces in my wardrobe.
And Ellie, what about you? What is your number one tip for op shopping success?
So following on from Gabby, I think going in with an open mind is really important, but also if you know the fabrics that you really love, like I personally love I love obviously natural woven fabrics instead of polyesters. They're better for the environment and they feel nicer, especially because they're more breathable up in Darwin. So you might find a piece that's like really big and something you would never wear, but it's like a beautiful fabric that you love. And even if you end up only making like a scrunchie or like something really small, at least you're reusing that. I mean, I've found like really big tops and stuff that are probably something too big and like excess material for warmer weather, and then just made it into something a little bit more suitable for Darwin because it's a fabric that I love. And it just changes it into something that can be worn again and again.
And are you both looking for brands that you know are really good quality, or are you looking for any brand? Because, I mean, when I look for brands that I think will last a lifetime.
Yeah, I mean,
absolutely.
Sometimes I will go in and I don't know the brand, but you can sort of see it. It's got like a specific where the label's done, and you look up that label and you go, oh wow, this is actually like a really expensive brand from way back when, and no wonder it's still in such good condition because it's a really good quality item that people don't hear of anymore.
Definitely, I agree. Or you can always just look at the tag and see what it's made from. And most of the time you can feel if it's a good material, and you can get a sense of if it's going to last you a long time.
Okay, so I'm going to set up the computer now, and what we're going to ask you to do is talk us through some of your favourite items and where you got them from and what you've done with them to make them suit your style.
Okay. So I've just picked a few items that I've thrifted from op shops in Darwin and back in Sydney as well. So this item that I thrifted in Sydney was a dress, a long sleeve dress, which came down, I'll just hold it up so you can see, and the bottom came down just above the knee. But when I moved to Darwin, it was just really hard to wear because I was sweaty and it just wasn't weather appropriate. So I chopped it in half and have made it into a two-piece, which I can wear together, or I can pair the skirt with the singlet, or I can pair the top with a different pair of shorts or something. So that's probably one of my favorites. And this little denim dress that I bought, that I thrifted in Darwin as well. The sleeves were much longer, and I just unpicked the sleeve, and now it's short sleeve, and it's a great chuck-on dress just to wear around. And I'll hand it over to Ellie.
Okay, so things I had this little skirt was actually, it was really lovely as a long sort of pencil skirt, but unfortunately I already have a uniform with my work, so wearing sort of corporate stuff just doesn't really suit my lifestyle. But going out and having fun. So I just made it into a little bit more of a better length to go out in, and yeah, it doesn't feel like I'm a professional businesswoman when I'm going out and having a few drinks with friends. Okay, second item. Sorry, I'm a little bit quiet. So this was actually a really big Miller's top that had like a really high neck and like lace inserts and stuff, and again, just not something I'd wear up here, and didn't fit me. So I just, so made it into a V-neck. I loved the sleeve detail, like there's those buttons, they're like my favorite kind of buttons with almost anything. And it's a really nice light white cotton. It's probably still too warm for Darwin now, but I'm thinking middle of dry season, or even if I do get to go home, hopefully fingers crossed soon, it'd be great to wear on the Gold Coast as well. So that's just a couple, and just so we don't run out of time.
And what about these beautiful pants? I love this one.
So these pants are actually an unfinished alteration for my friend. They're the O North brand, which is a really good quality, and special sort of brand because of the amazing artwork that goes onto it from Indigenous artists. So my friend, she loved them when she first got them, but the way that they were made, they had sort of like a lot of pleats at the front, and they weren't really all that flattering for her. So I've said I'll try my best. Again, I don't know if it'll be perfect, but just taking in those pleats and making a little bit more flattering on the waist, and then she can just keep using something that she paid a lot of money for and is really special to her. So that's just a nice thing to be able to do as well.
Do you have one more, Gabby?
Yes. A lot of my clothing kind of has the same theme of I've had it for a while and moved up here, and it's just not appropriate for the weather. So this top I actually bought overseas last year, and it was just like a big long sleeve men's button-up shirt, which I did wear a little bit like that. But when I moved back to Darwin, again, just really not weather appropriate. So I hemmed it, I took in the sides, I made it sleeveless, and I added some ties at the bottom. So now it is so much more weather appropriate and is like a little tie up top. And what else have I got? This was originally a jumpsuit, to the, a long jumpsuit, which again, just sits in my wardrobe as an unworn item. So I again chopped it, and now I wear it, at least 2-3 times a week. And it's, super breathable, really good fabric.
Yeah, you wear that all the time. I love that.
And to either of you, so this is shopping in person, but at the current time, we can't really go to the shops. So do you have any tips or experience on shopping secondhand online? And if you do, what are your most favourite sites to use? And do you have a tip for people on how to get the most out of that experience?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I know looking up particular brands on Facebook. So there's, if you have a favourite brand, like I know there's pages for Spell, which I've looked at in Arnhem, that are generally really expensive, but they're all like items that people just love to wear, especially for special occasions. So just going on Facebook, finding the page of the brand name that you love, and it's a buy, swap and sell page, like specific to what you want, rather than just like typing it into Marketplace or Google. So
and most of those
I think those
have those buy, swap and sell avenues that are
really makes it really easy. You can look for some of them I know have been known to, you have to be really careful because the label will be slightly different. So make sure you know your label that you're looking at. You make sure you get, you know, the fine details, because some people will put up fakes there that they're trying to get rid of and pass it off as legit. But,
and Gabby, have you found any items that you love secondhand online?
Yeah, I think maybe eBay, I mean, is a great one to find old pieces. I'll just show you. I actually bought this sewing box from eBay a few weeks ago, and it's just an old sewing box for me to keep all my things in, which was secondhand, so, you know, much more authentic than buying one from Spotlight. Also, Instagram has a lot of, you know, accounts dedicated to people posting their old vintage clothes that you can buy from them directly just by messaging them. I actually have a piece that I'll be hemming today, which is, I bought this on Instagram from a woman in Coffs Harbour up the coast of Sydney, who sells all her vintage clothing just through Instagram. Her name's Tallow and Tide, if you want to look her up. And she just has Tallow and Tide. We can post it later. But she sells all, you know, like locally made clothing straight from Instagram, which is great and really accessible.
Okay, so now we're going to get on to the mending section of the workshop. So today, as we were saying, we're going to be cutting and mending a hem and also doing some hole repairing. Now, who would like to go first?
I'll go first just with my one, because there's actually two that I was going to do.
Okay,
so, yeah.
Cool.
I'll do one and then Gabby can do first. Let's see if we get time for the third.
Now, we'll make sure that this is set up so you can all see what Ellie's doing.
Okay, so this is a dress that I bought a long time ago. It's just, to be honest, it wasn't a sustainably bought one or from an op shop, but that's why I want to mend it and make sure that I can still keep wearing it, because I know it wasn't incredibly expensive. It's not an incredibly good brand, but just to make it last that little bit longer, for the sake of, you know, not throwing out, there's a little hole here and really easy to fix. Sorry, yeah. Don't know if you can see. It's a bit hard to see because of the fabric, but I just put my thing through it. You see the size. It's quite big when you've got your finger underneath, but I think it's just a tiny little tear. So I'll just show you, like with a needle and thread, what I would do. Again, I'm not like an extreme expert. I'm just doing it so that, you know, when you go out and wear it, no one will notice that there's a little hole.
And that's perfect for our viewers, because a lot of people who are going to be watching this afterwards are probably really new to mending. So, yeah, that's great.
Super easy. Okay, so I'll just show you the items I have. So first of all, fusible interfacing. So you just iron it on. You can get it from Spotlight, really easy. If you don't know where exactly to find it, it's usually at the counter, but the girls there will be happy to help and just show you, you know, if you just ask for some fusible non-woven interfacing. Make sure it has the fuse on the back, because some of them, yeah, it's just the interfacing and it's called sew-in interfacing. So what I'm going to do, I'll keep going with what I've got. Little thimble and needle and thread, and just some little clippers. Ironing board and the dress. So what I'm going to do is, because it's such a small little hole, I'm only going to use a small square of the interfacing. So I'll just chop that off from the corner here. I think because I've had my second coffee, my hands are all shaking. Or I'm nervous, I don't know. So there's one side, if you look closely, there's one side that's got like a shiny, like sort of, there's little dots. It's really hard to see on the computer. But that's basically the glue side and then the non-glue side. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be putting this, we're going to turn the dress inside out, and that just will go over where the hole is. But what we want to do, like I said, I don't it's not like a chunk has been taken out, it's just from a tiny tear. So really that dress can be worked to go back together. Probably because I put my finger on it and I've been looking at it for ages. It's not as easy as it was. But I would just bring it together as much as I can and then iron on the facing over the top, because you want to see that the fabric is as close as it possibly can be together without it puckering on the sides. So there's still a little bit of a hole there. Again, I think it's probably because I've been playing around with it and it's been there for a while, so it's gone through the wash a couple times. But that's all right. You can always, if I'm going to take the interfacing off at the end, but this is basically just to hold it in place as much as I can before I sew it. So, sorry, no, it's not on. Hopefully it's on quickly. So we'll get that over like that.
So ideally, do we want to see as little of the interfacing as possible at this stage?
Yeah, definitely. That is the ideal. I might even grab a pin to sort of hold it in place as well. But it's really important that you don't get it to pucker, because you like I'm trying to go like this, and then I can see that it's folding the edges, and you just make sure you don't want any folds in it,
yeah,
because it's just going to sit funny then. I mean, another thing that I could possibly do with this is, because there's a seam right here and it's right in the center back of the dress, so that's the midline seam, I can just I would just fold that under and I would work it into the seam, because the dress would still fit me. But sometimes you don't have that option, and especially if this is in an awkward position where you've got the hole, then that just isn't going to work. So I'll just show you how I would patch the hole first. So just bring it in as much as you can. Again, no puckering. All right. Okay. And there, you sort of have it as close together as you can without the pucker.
Amazing. It's so flat.
Yeah.
It actually does, like, it doesn't even look like any puckering at all.
Mm. So.
And you're lucky because there's a pattern with white in it, so it kind of just looks like.
Yeah, it's part of it. But what you could also, if you had a matching colour, you could also, because I thought this hole would be closer together. Obviously, it's a little bit more worn through than I had thought it was. But if you had a fabric of the same colour, you could just put that between the fusible interfacing and the dress, and that way you would still have the same colour underneath, which would also work really well.
Okay.
So I'll bring you over to
the machine.
Actually, I'm not using the machine for this one. This is just a quick little hand sew, which anyone can do, because that way you can just pick up a needle and thread, and I'm sure most of you would already have that at home, and that's the easiest way to.
Do you want to see it?
To mend.
Do you want to see it?
Yeah. So, just thread my needle. Sorry, I should have prepared this a little earlier. Just cut your thread. All right. And so what we're going to do is, from the very outer edges, you just want to bring it in from starting at the very end. Let's do this far away. Just want to make sure you guys can see it. If you can't see it, just yell out. Let me know. and you just want to bring it as close to each other as possible. So sorry, it's really hard to be able to make sure you guys can see as well as, and so just grab a few threads from the end. You don't want to go way around the hole because then it will pucker again. So that interfacing is just working to sort of stabilize the fabric. And to get it as close as together as you can. So I don't know if this might take a little bit longer. See, I wish I could fast forward live.
Yes, we were joking. This is something I prepared earlier segment. Could have been good, but then you lose the live aspect.
So
that's coming together really nicely.
Yeah. And again, just working to make sure you don't get that puckering. You sort of just can put your finger underneath and flatten it out as you go along. And yeah, just working really hard to make sure that you only get a couple of threads right on the inner edge of the hole.
So this is a job you want to use your patience for?
Yes, and yeah, sorry that it's
excellent.
Probably looks a bit boring, but it's only, this will, I'll be finished in 5 minutes or so, and that's all you need.
Excellent.
So I don't know if maybe Gabby, you want to start, and I'll continue.
And then we'll show you the end product.
Show you the finish.
Oh, great idea.
Sure.
Okay, so just set up the laptop.
Okay, so I'm just going to be doing a really, really simple hem of this top. I'm just going to bring it up just a little bit because it kind of sits awkwardly. If I'm wearing a pair of shorts or skirt, it just sits right underneath the button, which I kind of don't like. I like it to sit at the button height. So I'm just going to literally trim the hem that's already there and rehem it, just so that straight along the whole entire top. So I'll start just by laying it out, making sure it's all even. I might just turn it around so I've got a full table length. So just lining up the top and the bottom of the top. And then sometimes what I often do is I fold then the top in half so that I get an even length on the front and the back of the top, rather than cutting straight along where you can get a little bit wonky. You could, if you wanted to be really precise, use a tape measure to tape along the exact height and just mark it with a fabric marker. But in this case, because the top's really small, like quite relatively small, I'm just gonna free cut it. And I know kind of what length that I want it. Whereas if it was something that I was still kind of playing around with, I would generally pin it, mark it along with a tape measure, try it on, see where it's sat, and then, go from there. So just a bit of trial and error. So I'll cut from the outside in, and we just want to keep it all nice and steady the whole way across. So I'll just pin it along here just to keep it together, and then using a good pair of fabric scissors, going to cut it the whole way across. Another good little tip is if you just kind of follow the line that's already on the top as the previous hem, you'll cut a straight line, a good little guide. So now I will flip the shirt inside out. and I'll be sewing from the inside. So I'll just get some pins.
And you always sew from the inside, don't you?
Yes. It looks better, and it actually, so when it comes to hemming, sometimes if you have a fabric that the thread runs really easily, I would double hem it. So I would fold and then fold again, which most of the time, if I have enough fabric, it's easy to do. But because I wasn't really working with a long hem to start with, I'm just going to single hem it, and I'll do 2 stitches right along the top of the previous hem to make sure that that doesn't run. So I'll just hem it so that I get a straight line to sew against.
And while you're hemming that, Gabby, I might just ask Ellie one of the questions that came through. When stitching with the interface, are you doing it through the interface or on top of the interface?
So the interface is glued, so you can't really avoid going through the interfacing because it's glued onto the fabric. So
it just becomes part of the fabric.
But what's great about it is because, so normally you can use it for stiffening collars and waistbands. And yeah, it is good for staying inside there. But because this is sort of left open on the back, you can sort of pull it away from underneath, which in this case is good because yeah, like you really don't want any of that interfacing showing, which it isn't going to do, and then the fabric does stay in place where you wanted it to.
Okay, does that answer your question there, Monica? Hopefully.
Okay, so
we're on to the back now of the hemming.
Pinning it. Again, we just want to line up the front and the back of the top so that we're not left with one hem sitting higher than the other. So I've hemmed the front of the top, and now I'm onto the back, and so I'll just line it up along the hem that I'm creating and just continue to pin. Oh, some of my pins are so bent. Continue pinning.
So for someone starting out by themselves and brand new, would you just say that having some good quality metal pins and some thread and sewing scissors are the 3 essential items for beginners?
Absolutely. And even a hem like this, I mean, even if you don't have a sewing machine, you could just hand sew along the whole entire hem, which might be a bit timely, but you're going to get the same result, and it's the same practice. We're just just goes to show how simple it is.
Is a whole other entity in itself. But there would be so many YouTube videos. Like if you look up different types of hemming with just a needle and thread, which was really common, especially in French sort of design. There is really cool ways to hand sew certain types of hems and seams if you don't have a machine and you've got a lot of time on your hands, which we do these days, so it's a bit of a win.
How good. And so what are you going to do now, Gabby?
So now that it's all pinned, because the iron is on and ready, and it will make it much easier when you do sew it, I'm just going to iron along this pinned hem, which will just mean that when I'm sewing, it'll create a much more streamlined hem, and it's just going to be easier because the ironing's obviously going to make it stay into place. So I'll just press over.
So essentially, you're just making it a very straight and
evening
pressed down line to
exactly.
sew along. Great for beginners, really.
Just means that when you're sewing, your fabric's not going to bunch up and make it harder for yourself. Okay, so now we're ready to go to the machine. I'll just move that out of the way. So I've already threaded the machine, but again, maybe we could post separate instructions if people are new to that as well. So my machine is threaded. now it is just another.
And can you start anywhere on the hem, or are you looking to start at a particular end of the item or anywhere?
So because my hem is probably about 2 inches wide, if you just show them this bit where I've pinned, I'm going to start sewing just at the top of the pin here, and then I'll do a second stitch right along the base of the new hem. And then what you can do is when you've finished, because I'll have all this excess material that I didn't secondhand because it wasn't enough, I'll just run my scissors along and just trim the whole line, really like just a little bit above the second stitch so that then the material won't run.
And if you had an overlocker or you were experienced in overlocking, that's where you could use the overlocker. Is that right?
Definitely.
Okay.
So
all right. So
just sew this hem. Removing the pins as you go.
now, whilst they're both sewing, I wanted to just talk you through some accounts you can look to for inspiration and ideas around sustainable fashion. And the 3 I love are a podcast called Wardrobe Crisis, and that's by Mrs. Claire Press, and she's on Instagram, and she's the sustainability editor at Vogue. And the Wardrobe Crisis podcast is actually funded by the Climate Council in Australia, and it interviews a different person every week around layering, looking at the transparency between different brands and designers who are doing something different and being really cutting edge in reducing their waste and chemical use. It also goes to Fashion Week and looks at people doing things differently and more environmentally friendly, as well as they just interviewed one I listened to last night from a week or 2 ago about these women who are doing a voyage around different parts of the ocean in the world, collecting the first bit of data on microplastics coming from clothing, which is really exciting and cool. And another person on Instagram that I love for inspiration is someone called Op Shop to Runway. She is a girl from Sydney, and she's now the SBS stylist. She's taken on board herself a challenge this year of buying no clothes. So I think last year she did no new clothes, only secondhand or vintage. And now this year she said, okay, I have so many beautiful items, I'm just going to buy nothing. And it's really cool. Like each week she uploads photos of like what she wore that week, and she runs styling sessions for free online through her Instagram. And she used to run in Sydney. She partnered up with Red Cross, and she used to run op shop tours where she would take you to the op shop and she would help style you based on your shape and what you were after and your style, which is really cool. And finally is this London group called Hubbub. They are like an environmental sustainability community organisation in England, and they have so many cool resources on their website to run clothes swaps in your office. So getting a rack just like this, you know, that's all you have to do. Just set it up. People can bring items they no longer want, and then other people in your office can take it for free. Or doing this in your street. Or actually what inspired this workshop today was I really wanted to run a clothes swap party as part of Seabreeze Festival, where people can bring up to 3 quality items and then swap them at the festival for free on the day with other items, which I will still do through Cool Mob once we're all allowed outside again. But these are things you can even do, in your workplace, in your street, with your friends, you know, get everyone round for wine and a dinner, and get them to bring 2 of their favourite items to swap that they no longer wear. But yeah, okay, so Ellie is ready now to share what she's have and product.
But, well, first of all, I didn't say this to you, but I just wanted to say with the finishing it off so that it's not going to come undone, you've got to pull it through at the end, and then there'll be a circle of the thread. So you go around and underneath that circle and pull that through, like so. And I just do that a couple of times, so then you've got that double knot to make sure that it won't come undone. Okay. It's very hard to do standing up. Definitely you know, sitting at a flat table makes a difference too, because then you can lay the fabric on there and it's obviously easier. Around and underneath again, and that should hold it in place for years to come, hopefully.
Look at that.
So you just get your trusty little clippers.
Ellie, that thread match is like identical colour.
Yeah, I was lucky. I didn't even, I have lots of threads. So thank God I don't have to go buying threads from Spotlight anymore. But there's just such an array there. And there's another tip for certain threads if you are sewing your clothes and stuff. It's called Rasant thread. That's the best quality thread you can get. It's a cotton outer and then polyester core, which just helps with, it's good for your machine. So a lot of cheap threads can stuff up your machine. What they do is they accumulate little bits of yarns off the thread into the machine, and it makes it harder to run the machine. So getting a good thread is actually really, really important if you want to keep that machine for longer, and they last longer on your clothing as well. So here it is at the end. You can see where the stitching is, but like, it's something that probably once you give it a wash a couple of times, it looks like, I can't even see it every time I put it up to the camera. Yeah, so that's it just there. Up close, you can tell, far away you'd never notice. And then there's the interfacing on the back. So I would just cut away the excess, and that will help to keep it stable and in place, and just something for that back thread to grip onto, which is another reason I used it actually, Monica, in answer to your question from before. It helps to keep the thread there too, because it's got that extra bit of support instead of the fabric that is a cheaper fabric and it would fall away from. So there you go, done.
Thank you, Ellie. And now we'll flick back to the top, which is, I think, done, or almost done.
So I've just finished off the second hem stitch. So I'll just snip off all of those threads and then I'll show it to you. So, okay, so as you can, I don't know if you can see that, but this little bit is the excess bit of the top from the hem, from the original hem that we still have. So it's got two brand new stitches as the hem. And now you can just run your scissors along that old hemline, because it's really well supported by those two new threads. And this is just going to prevent it from running. Again, it's easy to work on the table. So I'll just do the first, I'll just show you the first snip where you would start. So just about half a centimetre up from it.
We have a joke in this household because sewing is definitely for the patient-minded, and both these girls are actually also nurses, so they are very patient people, and I am one of the most impatient people, so I need to sew in tiny little increments because I get frustrated easily. But Ellie has a little tip she'd like to share, and then we might go to a question as well.
It's actually in relation to Gabby's hem there. So I'll just wait till she's finished snipping. But basically I can talk you through, if you roll it twice, then you don't have to worry about that inner, what it is on the inside, because you'll have a finish. Yeah, I sew these pants. And I think I did an overlock. I didn't bother overlocking them because I just rolled it twice. So say that was the raw edge, you just go under and over, and then sew along there, do the two lines, and then that way on the inside you wouldn't have any threads coming away.
And that's probably, because I think that's probably best to do when you have enough material to go over twice as well. So that's good. It saves you that task. And that will last then longer, won't it? Yeah. And then we have another question. Is it the same for mending socks?
The holes? So the holes are a stretch fabric. And yeah, I think you could definitely use it for a stretch fabric actually, but for a stretch, if you haven't had too many threads come away, you could possibly even get away with just putting that fusible interfacing underneath. You could probably get those threads really, really close together, give it a good iron, and just, yeah, you'd only need a couple stitches over the top with that too. And yeah, that would work fine. Got some socks with holes in them. Oh, have you got big holes in your socks? Sometimes. So you
feel free to put your audio on, Monica, because there's only a few of us, and then the audience can hear.
Yeah.
I think like I've repaired socks before, and it always just, the hole just comes back because I'm not doing what you were doing. I was just stitching them together.
Yeah.
Which just never works. Like it always just reopens.
Yeah.
I think that my mum, she darns socks, like creates a little patch using.
Yeah, patch. Yeah.
Right.
I don't know how to do that, so.
Yeah, because I was going to show originally a patch, but then I was like, oh, actually, I think this hole's quite small, so I'll just do the interfacing version. But if you put that fabric underneath it, like how big are we talking?
I guess sometimes, yeah. I guess if it was really big, I wouldn't bother.
Yeah. I mean, because I had some of my socks that I remember when I was in school, my toes would go like through them at the top. But if they're only like that big, just make sure you get like a stretch fabric as well. So yeah, it's because you wouldn't, there's woven fabrics and there's stretch fabrics, so you want to make sure you have one that's like a sock and is nice and stretchy. And then you could, I don't think you'd even really need the interfacing. You just turn the sock inside out, cut a little circle that would be quite a bit bigger than the hole itself, because you can always cut away the edges underneath. And then you would just sew like a circle around the edges. So just do like really fine little, almost like waves, I guess, around the edge of that hole, patched onto the fabric, and do the knot at the end, and that should stay in place. Even go, if you go around a couple of times even, you know, there's little things like if you want to do it really quickly, maybe it won't last longer, but if you do it twice, I think it would definitely be stuck there for a long time.
Great, thanks, Ellie.
No worries.
We're going to flick around to the final product of the top.
Okay.
Can you hold it up?
So I'll hold it up. So you can see now the top sits at a nicer length. And so I'll bring it close so you can see. So I've double stitched the new hem, which is great. And then I'll turn it inside out so you can see. So from before what I said, and then Ellie mentioned it again, you can definitely double hem, but because this fabric, like the hem that I was dealing with was quite little already, that's why I decided just to cut it. So I'll show you how it looks on the inside now. So you can see the stitch, and then that new cut edge literally sits like
couple of millimeters
above the new stitch. So it shouldn't run. And if it does, you can do actually another sewing line or just trim it a little bit more.
Okay, well, does anyone have any other questions they'd like to ask, or advice on any pieces they're looking to restyle? Whilst we've got our two little experts here. No? Yes? Okay, well, thank you everyone for tuning in, and thank you to Ellie and Gaby for sharing their wisdom. I really encourage you all to think of a brand that you love or an item that you love, and ask the company who makes it. Either email them, tag them on Facebook or Instagram to make them really more accountable, and ask who makes your clothes and what's in my clothes. Okay, thank you. Oh, and check the Cool Mob Facebook for upcoming workshops, and the ECNT website for the registration links. Okay,
Thank you.
Bye.